Hey, it's Luke here. Welcome back to the Transcending Thought Channel and podcast. In this video, I'm going to be giving you the liberating message of how to free yourself from suffering, from anxiety, from unhappiness, and to live from a place of peace and joy by learning to not take thoughts so seriously. So, the majority of our unhappiness, I believe, is generated by our own thinking minds. Our thoughts generate emotions in our body. If we are consistently thinking negative thoughts, fearful thoughts, worried thoughts, we'll always be feeling those emotions linked with those thoughts. Once we learn to not take our thoughts so seriously, when we learn to observe our thoughts without judgment and to realize that thoughts are just thoughts, they lose their power over us. They can no longer harm us. And we can live more peacefully in the present moment. For many people, when they are lost in thought, lost in the mind, you are experiencing events that aren't happening, but you experience them as if they are happening. So your mind will be creating images of your future, of things that may go wrong, and your mind will be generating all of these scenarios, these images about what may happen, and you're feeling the emotions tied to those events as if they were happening, when actually they're not happening. And you can free yourself from all of that if you were to just become a bit more present in the moment, a bit more awake. And the same for your past. Very often we relive our past, we're pulled back there by the mind. If you can realize that the past does not exist anymore, where is it? Can you see it? Can you touch it? Can you taste it? Can you smell it? Can it touch you? Can it hurt you right now? You may have some leftover wounds from your past, but are the actual events real? No. Where are they? There is no past. There is no future. There is just this moment. So when you can bring yourself out of this obsession with past and future and give your fullest attention to the present moment, and you can be more here and now, it lifts you out of the thinking mind. Your mind lives on past and future. It's always thinking about what happened, what may happen. So the moment you take yourself out of that, away from the past, away from the future, and hold yourself in presence, become more aware of the present moment, you're lifting yourself out of all of those heavy burdens from the past, or all of those worries from the future. And what actually happens is when you learn to surrender into the present moment, your life actually begins to improve. Things become easier. Your life situation, your life circumstances tend to improve greatly. And why is that? Because your external reality is a projection of your inner world. When you're constantly fearful, worried about the future, you're holding yourself in a vibration of fear, a low energy, a low vibration. And when you're in a low vibration, things of lower vibrations tend to materialize to you. If you are constantly in a state of fear, you're likely to keep manifesting a similar world around you based on that vibration. Your body is vibrating at a certain energy at all times. Compared to if you were able to rest right now in a vibratory state of peace, of joy, of just being, that more fulfilled, more peaceful state where you're not looking to the future for your happiness, you're not looking to the past about anything, about worrying about what happened or trying to look to the past for a sense of identity which it can't give you. When you remove past and future and just be here now, a question I often ask people is, what problem do you have right now? And your mind will come up with a million responses to that question, often about your bills and the relationship problems and whatever it may be. However, if you can lift yourself away from the mind's response to that question for a moment and just fully become conscious to the present moment and just look around and to ask yourself, what problem do I have in this very present moment, in the very, very now? Not in 10 minutes, not in a year, right now. You may notice that if you were to be fully present in the now, there wouldn't be too much bothering you. Usually in the present moment we're quite okay. And it's only when our mind starts chattering away do we then begin to start suffering. There was a philosopher named Pascal who said all of humanity's problems are caused by their inability to sit in a room alone by themselves. All of man's problems is caused by his inability to sit in a room alone by himself. That was the quote. Very famous quote. And what does he mean by that? Why is that? He doesn't really say. Why is that the cause of humanity's problems? Why do humans struggle so much to just sit comfortably in a room alone by themselves? I would say it's because humans cannot stop thinking. You cannot stop thought. Thoughts keep happening. So even if you're sitting quite comfortably alone in a room by yourself, nothing happening, just a quiet room, your mind will start chatting away about things that may happen, things you have to do, things you have to achieve, things you haven't achieved yet. Or it will bring up all these things from your past that you didn't like and it will start reliving them. And because your thoughts cause your feelings, when these are all playing in your mind, your emotional body starts to react to your thoughts and you find yourself in this dreadful state, which is all a product of your own mind. In the same way when you're in a dream, when you're dreaming in a nightmare, you experience these emotions as if what you're dreaming about is actually happening. You experience it as if it's real. You experience genuine fear in a nightmare. And it's all a product of your own mind. None of it's real. Only when you wake up can you see that. When you wake up, you see, I was just in a nightmare. It was all a dream. It was all a product of my own mind. The reason why there's a term called spiritual awakening is because that is exactly what we're talking about here. In a very similar way to when you awaken from a nightmare and you look back and you see, I was just dreaming. In a very similar way, when you go through the spiritual awakening, what happens is you awaken from the dreams of thought which were holding you captive. You were lost in these projections of the future or worries about the past. You were lost in the continuous stream of thinking in your mind. As you go through the spiritual awakening, you awaken from your thoughts. And rather than being completely identified with your thoughts, with the voice in your head that's always talking, the thinking mind, that voice in your head that's always chatting away about what happened or what may happen or what is happening and it's judging it, thinking about it all the time, in the spiritual awakening you realize that voice in your head always talking isn't who you are. You are not the voice in your head that's always talking. You are the awareness that's listening to it. The awakening is the realization that I am not my thoughts. I am the awareness of my thoughts. I am not the voice in my head always talking, always thinking. I am the one listening to it. And as you're able to realize yourself as the one listening to your thoughts, I am the listener of my thoughts. The consciousness in you expands. You expand, you grow in consciousness. Awareness or consciousness transcends thought. And then you are able to feel yourself as awareness, silent consciousness, just a witnessing presence that needs no thought to know itself. You do not need to think to know yourself. You don't need to use thought to know yourself, who you are, because who you are is not thought, it's silence. It's the awareness that lies beyond thought. This is the essence of spirituality. There's a really nice story in the Bible of Jesus where one of his disciples was, I'm not an expert on, I'm not going to be able to say it perfectly, but one of his disciples was put in prison, and all of the rest of his disciples came to Jesus and said, "Can you not free him from prison? Because you said when you came here, you said you came here to free us from prison." That's what Jesus said. "I came here to free you from prison." That's what he said. And they were all saying, why is he still in prison then? He's your disciple, let him out. And Jesus said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't talking about that kind of prison." And what does that mean? He's not talking about a literal prison, a physical prison. He's talking about the prison of the mind. That's what Jesus came to show you how to do. That's what every spiritual teacher has ever shown us how to do. They have guided us on how to liberate ourselves from identification with the mind, how to ultimately wake up spiritually. And that's all that it is. It's being able to sit comfortably in a room alone by yourself. That's a good metric, a good task for you to learn, because that's all that you really need to learn on the spiritual path. And what does that mean? It means you are able to rest in the present moment with a silent mind. You are able to be without getting lost in the commentary of thought of your mind. And these videos are always aiming to guide you there into the liberated state of presence, where you are awake, you're conscious, but you're not thinking. Or even if there is thought, you're not taking them so seriously. I'm very aware that often I will say, use phrases like stop, you're trying to stop thinking, but that's not correct. I just say that as a pointer. You don't stop thinking, because if you try to stop thinking, if you're trying to silence thought's just going to happen more. That's not the way. You can't push thought away, you can't fight with thought. The only thing that you can do is simply, firstly, disidentify from thought, which just means to no longer seek yourself in the mind, to realize that your identity isn't found as thought, it's found as awareness. And then it's simply moving awareness away from thought, which is often past and future, moving attention from there and into the now, into the breath, into your surroundings, paying more attention to what surrounds you now, giving more attention to your here and now. And as you direct your attention more into the present moment, into your breath, into the now, the mind tends to begin to silence on its own, because you're no longer feeding it. Where your attention goes, energy flows. If your attention is constantly going into past and future, you're looking to the future for your happiness, or you're looking to your past, trying to work things out, trying to whatever, you're feeding your mind. And the moment you begin to withdraw yourself from past and future and sink more deeply into the now, the mind loses its power source, which is you. Thought then ceases. And then, of course, you can still think when you need to. You can still use your mind when it's needed, but you are in control of it now, rather than your mind pulling you back to the past, pulling you into the future, running on its own. The old record player that never seems to stop, the constant thoughts circling through your mind from the moment your eyes open to the moment that they close at night. For many people, their mind is filled with constant noise. Here we are learning to take the record off the record player. Sometimes people will say they have a million tabs open in their mind like a computer screen. We're closing the tabs. And we're learning to just be. And if you learn to silence thought by surrendering into the present moment, what you'll notice is that your emotional body will likely also begin to settle. So when your thoughts are chaotic, your emotional body's chaotic, like a lake with stones being thrown into the lake. It's constantly ripples, constantly chaos. As thoughts begin to, which are the stones, as the thoughts begin to part, the lake begins to still. And then you are learning the profound ability to sit alone in a room by yourself and be okay, be at peace, be comfortable. There's nothing you need to figure out. There's nothing that you need to work out. That will be the mind there trying to fix this problem, and it can't do that. The only thing that the mind can do is get out of the way. And then when the mind is out of the way, there you are, awake, conscious. You know yourself as the consciousness rather than the thoughts. I really hope that's helpful. I hope these videos act as accelerators on your spiritual journey. It brings me a lot of joy making them, so I'm going to keep doing that. Remember to join my mailing list to stay updated with any retreats coming up soon. I'll hopefully be doing some in-person retreats around Kent in the UK and hopefully around London. So maybe I'll see some of you there. But for now, I'll remind you, there is one thing that matters. You don't need to fix the world. You don't need to solve all the world's problems. You don't need to fix your future. You have to become present. That's the main thing, the main task of you. And as you do that, everything else will fall into place.